My mother-in-law drugged me at my own wedding. But the hospital confirmed it. I woke up in a hospital bed wearing my wedding dress, and I had no idea how I got there. The last clear memory I had was cutting the cake with David 3 hours earlier. Everything after that was fragments, dizzy spells, stumbling during our first dance, my vision going blurry during the toasts. I remembered gripping David's arm so tightly during the ceremony that he whispered, "Are you okay?" twice. I blamed it on wedding nerves, dehydration, maybe the champagne on an empty stomach. But this wasn't a hangover. This felt wrong. "Mrs. Chen?" A nurse appeared beside my bed, clipboard in hand. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," I said, my voice hoarse. "What happened?" "Where's my husband?" "He's speaking with a doctor. You were brought in around 8 p.m. after collapsing during your reception. Your maid of honor was very concerned about your symptoms. She checked my 4-line. We ran some blood tests to rule out any medical issues." David walked in then, still wearing his tuxedo but with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled. Behind him was Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a serious expression. "Jenna, thank God you're awake." David rushed to my bedside, but something in his face looked strained. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been hit by a truck." "What's going on?" "The nurse said I collapsed." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, I need to discuss your blood test results with you. We found traces of diazepam in your system, that's Valium. A significant amount, actually. About 15 milligrams. The room went silent except for the beeping of machines. "That's impossible," I said. "I don't take Valium. I've never taken Valium." "That's what your husband told us, which is why we ran the test twice to confirm." Dr. Martinez consulted her chart. "The concentration suggests you ingested it approximately 2 to 3 hours before you were brought in. Can you think of anything you ate or drank that someone else prepared?" My mind raced back through the day. The hair and makeup trial ran smoothly. Getting dressed with my bridesmaids. The ceremony itself was a blur of faces and flowers. Then the reception. "The cake," I whispered. "We cut the cake around 5 p.m., and I felt weird shortly after." "Jenna, come on." David's voice had an edge to it. "You're suggesting someone deliberately put medication in our wedding cake? That's crazy." "Is it?" I turned to face him fully. "David, I could barely stand during our first dance. I thought I was going to pass out during the father-daughter dance with my dad. This explains everything. The symptoms you described are consistent with diazepam ingestion," Dr. Martinez confirmed. "Dizziness, confusion, muscle weakness, drowsiness. At the dose you received, it could have been dangerous if you'd consumed alcohol as well." "I only had half a glass of champagne," I said, remembering how my sister Sarah had kept water glasses filled for me all evening. David ran his hands through his hair. "But who would do something like that? And why?" I already knew the answer, even though I didn't want to believe it. There was only one person who had access to our cake before the reception, who had insisted on helping the caterers set up, who had made comments all week about how nervous and high-strung I seemed. "Your mother," I said quietly. David's face went white, then red. "Jenna, no. My mother would never. She was alone with the cake for 20 minutes while we were taking photos." "That doesn't mean anything," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The caterers were there, the venue staff. David, she's been undermining me for months. Remember when she accidentally gave out the wrong venue address to my college friends? Or when she told your aunt I was too thin and probably had an eating disorder?" My voice was getting stronger as the fog in my brain cleared. "She's been trying to control every aspect of our wedding since we got engaged." Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to inform you that this constitutes assault. Someone deliberately administered a controlled substance to you without your consent. We're required to file a police report." The words hit like a slap. Police report. Criminal charges. This wasn't just wedding drama anymore. "Wait," David held up his hands. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't have proof it was anyone specific." I stared at him in disbelief. "Your wife was drugged at her own wedding, and you're worried about protecting your mother?" "I'm worried about making accusations we can't prove." "Jenna, you're talking about my mother. The woman who raised me, who helped pay for this wedding. Who had access to the cake and has been making comments about my anxiety all week," I interrupted. "She kept saying I needed to relax and let things happen naturally. She even suggested I take something to calm my nerves." David's face went pale. "She said that to you?" "Tuesday night, at the rehearsal dinner. She pulled me aside and said she had something that might help if I was feeling overwhelmed. I thought she meant herbal tea or breathing exercises." Dr. Martinez made a note on her chart. "The police will want to interview everyone who had access to the food and drinks. They'll also want to test any remaining cake samples." "There won't be any left," I said, my heart sinking. It was almost gone by the time I collapsed. "Actually," David said slowly, "my mom insisted on saving the top layer for us to freeze. It's in the venue's kitchen freezer." Something in his tone had shifted. The defensive edge was gone, replaced by something that looked like dawning horror. "She insisted on that too," I said softly. "Even though I told her we didn't want to do the whole eat-year-old cake on our first anniversary thing." Dr. Martinez stepped toward the door. "I'll call the police now. They'll want to collect that cake sample tonight before anyone can tamper with it." After she left, David sank into the chair beside my bed. "Jenna, if she really did this. You still don't believe me?" It wasn't a question. "It's not that I don't believe you. It's that I can't wrap my head around the idea that my own mother would drug my wife on our wedding day. What possible reason would she have?" I thought about the conversation I'd overheard 3 weeks ago, when Margaret was talking to her sister about how I was too independent and needed to learn to depend on David more. How she complained that I was too opinionated during wedding planning. "Control," I said simply. She wanted me compliant and manageable. And it worked, didn't it? I barely remember our vows, David. I can't remember our first dance or my dad's speech. She stole our entire wedding day from me. David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. "What is it?" "Text from my mom. She's asking if we made it to the hotel safely, and... He paused, reading. She wants to know how I'm feeling. Not you. Me. She's asking if I'm feeling more relaxed about everything now. The text message felt like a smoking gun, but David was still staring at his phone like he couldn't process what he was reading. David, do you see what she's asking? She's not concerned about me being in the hospital. She's asking if you're feeling more relaxed. I tried to sit up straighter, fighting through the lingering grogginess. She knew. She knew exactly what she gave me. He set the phone down with shaking hands. Maybe she just meant. Stop. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Just stop defending her for 5 minutes and think about what happened tonight. Before he could respond, my phone started buzzing on the bedside table. David handed it to me, and I saw my sister Sarah's name on the screen. Sarah? Is everything okay? Jenna, thank God you're awake. I'm still at the venue helping clean up, and you need to know something. Her voice was tight with anger. I was talking to Marcus, the catering manager, about boxing up leftover food. He told me something really weird. What? He said your mother-in-law came into the kitchen around 4:30 and insisted on fixing a slice of cake for you personally. She told him you were feeling anxious and she wanted to make sure you got the perfect piece before the cutting ceremony. My stomach dropped. She prepared a specific slice for me? Marcus thought it was sweet at first, but then he said she was really particular about which piece you got. She made him promise that when you and David cut the cake, she would personally hand you your slice. Sarah's voice got quieter. Jenna, she marked the plate with a little pink ribbon so she wouldn't forget which one was yours. David had gone completely still beside me. I could see him remembering, the same way I was. Margaret had been so insistent about the cake-cutting photos, positioning herself right beside us. She'd handed me my plate with a huge smile, saying something about how I deserved the prettiest piece. Sarah, is Marcus still there? Yeah, and here's the thing, he saved some cake for the staff to take home, but Margaret specifically told him not to touch your piece. She said it was special and had to be preserved exactly as it was. The police are going to want to talk to him. Police? Sarah's voice shot up. Jenna, what's going on? I explained about the blood test results while David sat silently, his head in his hands. When I finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to kill her, she finally said. I'm going to absolutely kill her. Jenna, do you realize you could have died? Mixing that medication with alcohol, or if you'd had some kind of allergic reaction. I know. My voice came out as a whisper. There's more, Sarah continued. I was talking to Aunt Linda, and she said Margaret kept asking her throughout the reception if she noticed how much calmer you seemed. She kept commenting on how peaceful you looked during the ceremony. That was when David finally looked up. She was gloating, he said, his voice hollow. She was actually gloating about how well her plan worked. David. No, Jenna. You're right. The text message, the specific cake slice, asking people if they noticed how calm you were. He stood up abruptly and started pacing. She planned this. She actually planned to medicate my wife on our wedding day. The door opened and Dr. Martinez returned with a police officer, a woman in her 40s with graying hair and serious eyes. Mrs. Chen, I'm Detective Rodriguez. I understand you may have been given medication without your consent. As I began explaining everything to the detective, I watched David's face cycle through emotions, disbelief, anger, and finally, a cold fury I'd never seen before. His mother had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and we both knew it. Detective Rodriguez took detailed notes as I recounted the evening, asking specific questions about timing and who had access to what. David sat quietly, occasionally adding details, his earlier defensiveness completely gone. We'll need to collect that cake sample tonight, Detective Rodriguez said. Is there anyone else who might have witnessed your mother-in-law's behavior around the food preparation? The catering manager, Marcus. My sister Sarah is still at the venue with him. I gave her Sarah's number. And probably the photographer, she was taking behind-the-scenes shots in the kitchen area. David's phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, his jaw tightened visibly. Another text from my mother. She's asking if we need her to bring us anything at the hotel. She says she has some herbal tea that might help us both sleep peacefully tonight. He showed me the screen. Jenna, she's still trying to give you something. Detective Rodriguez looked up sharply. Don't respond to that message. We may want to set up a controlled interaction later. She made another note. Has your mother-in-law ever mentioned having access to prescription medications? She takes care of my grandmother, David said slowly. Grandma Rose has dementia and takes several medications, including, oh God. His face went white. Including Valium for anxiety and sleep issues. Mom manages all her prescriptions. How often does she have access to these medications? Daily. She lives with my grandmother and handles all her medical care. David looked sick. She would know exactly what dosage to use, what the effects would be. My phone rang, Sarah again. Jenna, you need to hear this. I'm putting Marcus on speaker. Marcus's voice came through clearly. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry about what happened. I should have thought it was strange when your mother-in-law insisted on handling your cake slice personally. Can you tell the police exactly what she did? She came into the kitchen around 4:15, maybe 4:20. Said she wanted to prepare a special piece for the bride because you were feeling overwhelmed. She asked for a few minutes alone to add a special touch. I thought she meant extra frosting or decorating. Detective Rodriguez leaned closer to the phone. This is Detective Rodriguez, NYPD. How long was she alone with the cake? Maybe 10 minutes? I had to handle something in the dining room. When I came back, she had your piece ready on a separate plate with a pink ribbon tied around the base. She was very specific that this exact piece had to go to you. Did you see her add anything to the cake? Not directly, but when I came back, she was wiping something off her hands with a napkin. And she threw the napkin away in our kitchen trash, not the regular bins. Detective Rodriguez stood up immediately. Is that trash still there? Should be. We don't empty the kitchen bins until tomorrow morning. We're sending officers to collect everything now. Don't let anyone near that trash. After hanging up, Detective Rodriguez turned back to us. This is looking more premeditated by the hour. Mrs. Chen, I have to ask, has your mother-in-law ever made threats toward you, even subtle ones? I thought about all the passive-aggressive comments, the undermining, the constant criticism disguised as concern. Nothing direct, but she's made it clear she doesn't think I'm right for David. Last month, she told his sister that I was too strong-willed and needed to learn my place. She said what? David's voice was dangerously quiet. Jessica told me at the bridal shower. Your mom said marriage would soften my edges and teach me to be more supportive instead of challenging you all the time. David stood up and started pacing again. She's been planning this longer than just today. Jenna, she's been talking about you being anxious for weeks. She kept asking me if I thought you needed something to help you relax. What did you tell her? That you were handling wedding stress just fine. But she kept pushing, saying she was worried about you having a panic attack during the ceremony. He stopped pacing and looked at me with horror. She was building a narrative. If anyone questioned why you seemed out of it, she had already planted the idea that you were unstable. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled. She stepped away to take the call, then returned with a grim expression. Officers are at the venue now collecting evidence. But there's something else. Your mother-in-law just showed up there asking about the leftover cake. She told venue staff she wanted to clean up and help, but they're not letting her into the kitchen area. David's phone started ringing. Margaret's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Detective Rodriguez said quickly. Let it go to voicemail. We want to see what she says. The ringing stopped, then immediately started again. Then again. She's getting desperate, I said, watching the phone. She knows we're not at the hotel where we're supposed to be. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. Which means she knows her plan didn't work the way she intended. The question is, what was she planning to do next? The voicemail started playing automatically after the fourth missed call, and Margaret's voice filled the hospital room through David's speaker. David, honey, I'm at the venue helping clean up and I can't find you anywhere. The staff is being very rude about the kitchen area. Call me back immediately. Beep. David, this is ridiculous. I just want to help pack up the cake properly. These caterers don't know what they're doing. Where are you and Jenna? Beep. I'm getting worried now. Marcus is acting very strange and won't let me near the leftover food. Did something happen? I have Grandma Rose's evening medications with me if Jenna needs something to help her sleep. She looked so tired during the reception. Detective Rodriguez and I exchanged glances. She brought more medication with her, I said, my blood running cold. David's face had gone completely ashen. She was planning to drug you again. At the hotel. His phone buzzed with a text. This time he read it aloud. David, I'm coming to the Marriott now. Room 1247, right? I have chamomile tea and something stronger if Jenna needs it. She seemed so unwell during the reception. A mother knows these things. We never told her our room number, David said, his voice barely above a whisper. How would she know? Detective Rodriguez asked sharply. She booked the room, I realized, feeling sick. She insisted on booking our wedding night suite as her gift to us. She said she wanted it to be perfect. Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio. I need units dispatched to the Marriott downtown, room 1247. Suspect may be attempting to access the location with controlled substances. David suddenly grabbed his phone and started scrolling frantically through his messages. Jenna, look at this. 3 weeks ago, she texted me asking about your medical history. She wanted to know if you had any heart conditions or took any medications. He showed me the screen. The text read, just want to make sure I have everything I need for the big day. Does Jenna have any health issues I should know about? Allergies? Heart problems? I want to be prepared to help if she gets overwhelmed. What medications is she on? I told her you didn't take anything except birth control, David continued, scrolling. And I said your heart was fine because you just had a physical for insurance. She was making sure the Valium wouldn't kill me, I said, the realization hitting like a punch to the gut. She researched the safest dosage. Detective Rodriguez looked up from her radio. Officers at the venue found something interesting. Your mother-in-law had a small pill crusher in her purse, along with an unmarked bottle containing 6 Valium tablets. She claimed they were for her own anxiety about the wedding. Grandma Rose's pills come in a prescription bottle with her name on it, David said immediately. Mom would never carry loose pills unless she'd already used some and didn't want anyone tracking them back to your grandmother's prescription, I finished. My phone rang. This time it was my dad. Jenna? Sweetheart, there's a police officer at our house asking questions about the wedding. Is everything all right? Your mother and I are worried sick. Dad, I'm okay, but something happened at the reception. I'm at the hospital. We're on our way. Wait, Dad. Did Margaret ever talk to you or Mom about me being anxious or needing medication? There was a pause. Actually, yes. Last week when she called about final head count, she mentioned being concerned about your stress levels. She asked if you'd ever had panic attacks or needed anxiety medication. We told her you were handling everything just fine. What else did she ask? She wanted to know if you'd eaten anything that day, if you'd been drinking water, what time you usually went to bed. Said she wanted to make sure you were taking care of yourself. Dad's voice got tighter. Jenna, why are you asking these questions? Detective Rodriguez gestured for the phone. Mr. Thompson? This is Detective Rodriguez, NYPD. We're investigating a possible assault case involving your daughter. Mrs. Chen was given medication without her consent during the wedding reception. I could hear my father's sharp intake of breath, then my mother's voice in the background asking what was wrong. We'll need to speak with both of you about any conversations you had with the suspect, Detective Rodriguez continued. Can you come to Mount Sinai Hospital? After she hung up, Detective Rodriguez turned back to us. Your mother-in-law has been planning this for weeks, possibly months. She gathered medical information, researched safe dosages, and established a narrative about your mental state with multiple family members. David was staring at his phone again. There's more. She texted Jessica 2 days ago asking if she thought you seemed unstable during your bachelorette party. And she asked my Uncle Robert if he noticed you being high-strung at the rehearsal dinner. She was building a case, I said, feeling nauseous. If anyone questioned what happened, multiple people would remember her expressing concern about my mental health. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly. It's a sophisticated approach. She was creating reasonable doubt before she even committed the crime. David's phone rang again. This time, he looked at me before answering. It's Jessica, he said. My sister. I nodded, and he put it on speaker. David, what the hell is going on? Mom just called me crying, saying the police won't let her help clean up and that you and Jenna are missing. She thinks something terrible happened and she's talking about driving to every hospital in the city to find you. David and I looked at each other. His sister had no idea what her mother had done, but Margaret was already spinning the story, positioning herself as the worried mother-in-law rather than the perpetrator. Jessica, David said carefully, we're at Mount Sinai. Jenna's okay, but something did happen at the reception. Oh my god, what? Is she hurt? Was there an accident? Mom drugged her. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. What did you just say? Jessica, Mom put Valium in Jenna's wedding cake. The hospital confirmed it with blood tests. She's been planning this for weeks. Another long silence, then Jessica's voice came back shaky and confused. That's impossible. David, you're scaring me. Mom would never do something like that. Are you sure the hospital didn't make a mistake? There's no mistake, I said, finding my voice. Your mother crushed up pills and mixed them into a specific slice of cake that she made sure I would eat. The catering manager witnessed her preparing it. But why would she? I mean, what possible reason? Jessica's voice trailed off. David ran his hand through his hair. She wanted Jenna to be more compliant. More manageable. She's made comments for months about Jenna being too independent, too opinionated. No. Jessica's voice got firmer. No, I don't believe this. Mom loves you both. She's been so excited about this wedding. She spent months planning to drug me, I interrupted. Jessica, she asked multiple family members about my medical history. She researched what medications would be safe to give me. She brought a pill crusher to my wedding. Detective Rodriguez gestured for the phone. Miss Chen? This is Detective Rodriguez with the NYPD. We have physical evidence linking your mother to this crime. We found the pill crusher in her purse, along with unmarked tablets. This is insane, Jessica whispered. Detective, my mother is a caregiver. She takes care of our grandmother who has dementia. Those pills could be for anything, and she needs the crusher because grandma can't swallow whole tablets anymore. Your grandmother's medications would be in properly labeled prescription bottles, Detective Rodriguez replied. These were loose tablets in an unmarked container. Can you think of any reason your mother would carry medication that way? The silence stretched again. Then Jessica spoke, her voice smaller. David, do you remember 2 months ago when Mom said Jenna seemed overwhelmed at Easter dinner? She pulled me aside afterward and said she was worried about Jenna having a breakdown. I wasn't overwhelmed, I said immediately. I was trying to help serve dinner and she kept telling me I was doing everything wrong. She said you looked pale and shaky, Jessica continued slowly. She asked me if I thought you might be having anxiety issues. And then last week, she called asking if I had any Valium left over from when I had my dental surgery. David sat up straighter. She asked you for medication? She said she was feeling nervous about the wedding and her doctor couldn't see her until next week. I told her I'd flushed the leftover pills months ago, but... Jessica paused. But then she asked if I knew anyone else who might have some. She was really persistent about it. Detective Rodriguez made another note. What exactly did she say when she asked for the medication? She said she needed something mild, just to take the edge off. She wanted to make sure she could be helpful and supportive during the wedding events. She said the last thing she wanted was to be too anxious to take care of her family. Take care of her family, I repeated. Not celebrate with her family. Take care of us. David's phone started buzzing with texts. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. She's at the hotel. She got past security somehow and she's outside our room. He read the messages aloud. David, I'm at your door but you're not answering. I'm getting very worried. I have everything you need for tonight. Please let me help take care of Jenna. Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio again. Suspect is at the Marriott, attempting to access the victim's hotel room. She may be carrying additional controlled substances. Jessica, David said urgently, where does Mom usually keep Grandma's medications? In a locked box in the kitchen. Why? I need you to go check that box right now. Tell me if any of Grandma's Valium is missing. David, I can't just go through Mom's things. Jessica, your mother committed a felony tonight. She could have killed Jenna if she'd miscalculated the dosage or if Jenna had drunk more alcohol. This isn't about privacy anymore. I could hear Jessica moving around on the other end of the line, then the sound of keys jingling. Okay, I'm opening the medication box. Let me see. Grandma's supposed to have a full bottle of diazepam. It was just filled 3 days ago for a 30-day supply. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. David, there are only 22 pills left. 8 pills are missing. She only used 1 or 2 for me, I said quietly. Where are the other 6 pills? Detective Rodriguez looked grim. In her purse at the venue, and possibly whatever she brought to your hotel room. She was planning to medicate you again tonight. David's phone rang with an incoming call from Margaret. This time, Detective Rodriguez nodded for him to answer it. Put it on speaker, but let me do most of the talking, she instructed. David accepted the call. Hello, Mom. David, thank goodness. I've been so worried. I'm right outside your hotel room but you're not here. Where are you and Jenna? I brought some tea and something to help her sleep. She looked so unwell during the reception, sweetheart. I think she might be coming down with something. Detective Rodriguez motioned for David to keep her talking. What kind of something, Mom? Just a mild sedative, honey. The same thing I give Grandma Rose when she's agitated. It would help Jenna get a good night's sleep so she feels better for your honeymoon flight tomorrow. The room went completely silent. Margaret had just confessed to planning to drug me again, completely unaware that she was talking to the police. Mom, David said, his voice cracking slightly, we're at the hospital. The hospital? Oh no, what happened? I knew something was wrong when Jenna seemed so disoriented during the reception. I should have acted sooner. I'm coming there right now. Mom, stop. David's voice got stronger. We know what you did to the cake. The line went dead silent. Then Margaret's voice came back, but it sounded completely different. Colder. More controlled. I have no idea what you're talking about, David. I think the stress of the wedding has made you both paranoid. Paranoid? David's voice rose dangerously. Mom, you just offered to give my wife sedatives. The police heard every word. Another long silence, then Margaret's laugh, but it wasn't the warm maternal laugh I'd heard for 2 years. This was sharp, calculating. Police? David, you're being ridiculous. I offered herbal tea to help Jenna sleep. She's obviously having some kind of breakdown and you're enabling her delusions. Detective Rodriguez leaned closer to the phone. Mrs. Chen, this is Detective Rodriguez, NYPD. We have evidence that you administered diazepam to your daughter-in-law without her consent. We need you to return to the wedding venue immediately. I'm not speaking to police without my lawyer present. Margaret's voice had gone ice cold. And I'm certainly not taking orders from anyone who believes my son's wife's hysterical accusations. Mom, David said, his voice breaking, they found the pill crusher in your purse. They had the cake samples. Jessica confirmed that Grandma's medication is missing. Jessica? Margaret's tone sharpened. You got Jessica involved in this nonsense? David, I am your mother. I carried you for 9 months, raised you for 28 years, and this is how you repay me? By believing some girl's lies over your own family? The contempt in her voice when she said some girl made my blood run cold. After 2 years of fake smiles and passive-aggressive comments, Margaret's mask was finally slipping completely. She's my wife, David said firmly. And you drugged her at our wedding. I helped her, Margaret snapped. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was watching her stumble around like a nervous wreck? She was making a fool of herself, and by extension, making a fool of you. I simply gave her something to help her relax and be the bride she should have been. Detective Rodriguez and I stared at each other. Margaret had just confessed everything, and she genuinely seemed to believe she'd done the right thing. You gave her medication without her knowledge or consent, Detective Rodriguez said into the phone. That's assault, Mrs. Chen. Potentially attempted murder depending on the dosage. Attempted murder? Margaret's voice rose to a shriek. I gave her a tiny amount of mild anxiety medication. The same thing millions of people take every day. If anything, I saved her from humiliating herself in front of 150 people. You could have killed me, I said, finding my voice. I could have had an allergic reaction, or fallen and cracked my skull, or... Oh, please. Stop being so dramatic, Jenna. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You turn everything into a crisis. David, can't you see how exhausting this is? She's in the hospital making wild accusations instead of thanking me for helping her get through the most important day of her life. David stood up abruptly. Get through it? Mom, she doesn't remember our first dance. She barely remembers our vows. You stole our entire wedding day from us. I made it better. David, you said yourself she seemed calmer during the ceremony. The photographs are going to be beautiful because she wasn't tense and anxious looking. Your children will see a beautiful, serene bride, not some frantic. Stop talking. David's voice cut through her tirade like a knife. Just stop. You drugged my wife. You planned it for weeks. You brought more medication to drug her again tonight. How can you possibly think any of that was okay? Margaret's response came after a long pause, and when she spoke, her voice was eerily calm again. David, I love you. Everything I've ever done has been because I love you and want what's best for you. When you calm down and think rationally about this, you'll realize that I was trying to help. Jenna needs professional help, and instead of getting it, she's convinced you to attack your own mother. Professional help? I said incredulously. You're the one who needs help. What kind of person crushes up pills and puts them in someone's food? The kind of person who watches her son marry someone completely wrong for him and tries to salvage the situation, Margaret replied coldly. David, she's turning you against your family. Can't you see that? This is exactly what manipulative people do. The accusation hung in the air like poison. David stared at his phone in absolute silence, and I could see something fundamental shifting in his expression. Manipulative, he repeated slowly. Mom, you're calling Jenna manipulative while you're standing outside our hotel room with a bag full of sedatives. I brought chamomile tea and 1 mild tablet in case she needed it, Margaret shot back. The fact that you're twisting my concern into something sinister proves my point exactly. Detective Rodriguez held up her hand and muted the call. We have officers moving into position at the hotel. She's not going anywhere. She unmuted the phone. Mrs. Chen, I need you to place any medications you're carrying on the ground and step away from the hotel room door. I'm not doing anything until I speak to my lawyer. Mom, David said, his voice hollow, do you understand what you've done to our marriage? Jenna can't trust you now. She can't trust me because I defended you. Our wedding day is ruined forever. Your wedding day was beautiful because of what I did, Margaret insisted. David, in 5 years, you'll thank me. When Jenna gets the help she needs and learns to be a proper wife, you'll understand that I saved your marriage before it even began. I felt like I'd been slapped. A proper wife? Someone supportive instead of combative. Someone who lets her husband lead instead of questioning every decision. Someone who appreciates her mother-in-law's guidance instead of fighting it. Margaret's voice was getting more agitated. David, she's made you miserable for months with all her opinions about the wedding. I watched my sweet boy turn into a nervous wreck trying to manage her demands. Her demands? David's voice cracked. Mom, you changed our venue behind our backs. You invited 50 people we didn't approve. You told the florist to switch our flowers because you didn't like the colors. Jenna wasn't making demands, she was trying to have some say in her own wedding. Because you were too polite to tell her no. David, that's what wives need, firm boundaries. Structure. When Jenna learns to trust your judgment instead of constantly challenging it, she'll be much happier. Detective Rodriguez was making rapid notes, but I could barely focus on anything except the horrible realization of what Margaret had really been trying to accomplish. You weren't just trying to calm me down, I said slowly. You were trying to break me. Make me dependent. I was trying to show you what marriage could feel like when you stopped fighting everything, Margaret replied, her voice taking on an almost maternal tone. Didn't you feel more peaceful during the ceremony? Less anxious about every little detail? I felt violated, I whispered. David's phone started buzzing with another call, Jessica again. He declined it, but immediately got a text that made him go pale. What is it? I asked. Jessica found something else. She's going through Mom's room. He read the text aloud. David, I found a notebook in Mom's nightstand. She's been writing about Jenna for months. You need to see this. Margaret must have heard because her voice went sharp. Jessica has no right to go through my private things. David, you need to control your sister right now. Control Jessica? David laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, I'm not controlling anyone. That's what you never understood. I don't want to control Jenna. I fell in love with her because she's strong and independent and challenges me to be better. And look where that's gotten you, in a hospital room, married to someone who's trying to have your mother arrested. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled. Suspect is in custody at the Marriott. Officers recovered a thermos containing liquid that smells like chamomile tea, and 3 unmarked tablets. The hotel room went quiet except for the sound of Margaret's sharp intake of breath through the phone. Mrs. Chen, you're being arrested for assault, possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute, and reckless endangerment, Detective Rodriguez said into the phone. Officers will read you your rights. David, Margaret's voice turned pleading, don't let them do this to me. I'm your mother. Everything I did was out of love. David closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were filled with tears. Mom, if you loved me, you never would have hurt my wife. He hung up the phone. The silence after David hung up was deafening. He sat back down heavily, staring at his phone like it was a bomb that might go off again. 28 years, he whispered. I've known her for 28 years and I had no idea she was capable of something like this. Detective Rodriguez tucked her notepad away. Mr. Chen, I know this is difficult, but we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. Tonight, focus on taking care of your wife. After she left, David and I sat in the hospital room without speaking for what felt like hours. The wedding dress I was still wearing felt heavy and wrong now, like wearing a costume from someone else's life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. David, you need to see this notebook. Can I bring it to the hospital? What do you think? David asked, showing me the message. I need to know, I said, though part of me was terrified of what else we might discover. 20 minutes later, Jessica walked into the hospital room with red eyes and a small leather notebook clutched in her hands. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 2 hours. I'm so sorry, Jenna, she said immediately, rushing to my bedside. I had no idea Mom was. I mean, I knew she had strong opinions about things, but this. She held up the notebook with shaking hands. This is insane. What's in it? David asked quietly. Jessica opened to a page marked with a sticky note. Entries going back 6 months. Listen to this one from March 15th. She cleared her throat and began reading in a shaky voice. David seems more stressed lately. Jenna is pushing him to make decisions about the wedding that clearly make him uncomfortable. She needs to learn that a good wife supports her husband's choices instead of creating conflict. I may need to intervene more directly. My stomach dropped. March 15th was when we had the argument about the guest list. There's more, Jessica continued, flipping pages. April 3rd, Jenna contradicted David twice during dinner tonight about honeymoon plans. She doesn't seem to understand that marriage requires compromise, which means she needs to be more flexible. David is too kind to correct her behavior properly. A mother sometimes has to step in when her son is too generous for his own good. David ran his hands through his hair. I don't remember thinking she contradicted me. We were just discussing different options. Jessica turned to another marked page. May 20th, called Dr. Peterson about anxiety management. He explained how small doses of diazepam can help highly strung personalities become more agreeable. Jenna's constant need to control everything is exhausting David. If she could experience what it feels like to simply trust and follow instead of fighting, she might learn to appreciate a more traditional dynamic. She called a doctor? I felt sick. She was getting medical advice about drugging me? It gets worse. Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. June 10th, spoke with Marcus at the venue about food service timing. He's very accommodating about special dietary needs. Confirmed that the bride and groom's cake cutting happens before alcohol service becomes heavy. Perfect timing for helping Jenna have the peaceful, traditional ceremony she secretly wants but is too proud to admit. David stood up abruptly. She planned this 2 months ago. While we were picking out flowers and arguing about place cards, she was planning to drug my wife. Jessica flipped to the most recent entry. This one is from yesterday morning. Her voice broke slightly. July 15th, everything is ready for tomorrow. David will finally see how beautiful and serene Jenna can be when she stops fighting everything. Once she experiences how wonderful it feels to simply trust and follow her husband's lead, their marriage will be everything it should be. Sometimes a mother has to give her children the gifts they're too stubborn to accept themselves. The room fell silent again. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in around me. She really thought she was helping, I whispered. No, David said firmly, turning to face me. Don't you dare make excuses for her. She thought she was fixing you, Jenna. Like you were broken. His voice cracked. And the worst part is, I gave her ammunition. Every time I mentioned being tired from wedding planning, or stressed about decisions, she turned it into evidence that you were the problem. Jessica turned to another page, her hands trembling. There's more recent stuff. From this week. She took a shaky breath. July 12th, final dress fitting went well. Jenna looked beautiful but tense. Asked David if she'd been having trouble sleeping, he said she's been tossing and turning, worried about last-minute details. Perfect opportunity to suggest the chamomile tea blend for tonight. We'll add just enough to help her sleep deeply and wake up refreshed and compliant for tomorrow. She drugged me before the wedding too? My voice came out as a croak. David's face went white. The tea. Jenna, remember Tuesday night when you said you slept so deeply you almost missed your alarm? You never sleep that hard. I thought back to that night. Margaret had stopped by around 8 p.m. with a thermos of what she called her special blend for pre-wedding nerves. I drank the entire cup because it tasted so soothing, and then slept for nearly 12 hours straight. I thought it was just exhaustion from wedding prep, I whispered. But I felt groggy all Wednesday morning. Like I was moving through fog. Jessica kept reading. July 13th, tea worked perfectly. David said Jenna slept better than she has in weeks. She'll be more receptive to suggestions today. Confirmed with caterer that I can access kitchen area during photo session. Everything is in place. She documented everything, Detective Rodriguez said, reappearing in the doorway. We'll need that notebook as evidence, but this level of premeditation significantly strengthens the case. David's phone started buzzing with calls from numbers we didn't recognize. He declined the first few, but they kept coming. Must be reporters, Jessica said grimly. Someone at the venue probably talked. This is going to be everywhere by morning. My heart sank. Our private nightmare was about to become public entertainment. Our honeymoon, I realized suddenly. We're supposed to fly to Italy tomorrow afternoon. We'll figure that out later, David said, but I could see the weight of everything settling on his shoulders. The wedding day we'd never get back. The family relationships that were permanently shattered. The trust that would take years to rebuild, if it ever could be. A new text came through on David's phone from his Uncle Robert, just heard from police. Is it true? Margaret really drugged Jenna? Your Aunt Linda is beside herself. She keeps saying she should have known something was wrong. The whole family is going to implode, David said quietly. Grandma Rose. God, how do we tell an 86-year-old woman with dementia that her caregiver and granddaughter has been arrested? Jessica looked up from the notebook. David, there's something else. Mom wrote about Grandma Rose too. She flipped to an earlier page. From January, Rose was agitated about her new medication schedule, but she calmed down quickly once I adjusted her evening dose slightly. It's amazing how much more pleasant she is when she's properly medicated. Some personalities simply require chemical assistance to function in harmony with others. She's been over-medicating Grandma, I breathed. We have to call Adult Protective Services, David said, pulling out his phone. If she's been experimenting with Grandma's medications. Already in progress, Detective Rodriguez said. We're sending someone to check on your grandmother tonight. Jessica, can you stay with her until we sort this out? Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I just keep thinking about all the times Mom said she was helping people. How many others has she done this to? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. How many others had Margaret helped over the years? I thought about every family gathering where someone had seemed unusually drowsy, every time Margaret had insisted on bringing special tea or homemade treats to stressed relatives. Dr. Martinez returned with my discharge papers. Mrs. Chen, you're clear to leave, but I want you to follow up with your primary care physician within 48 hours. The diazepam should be completely out of your system by tomorrow evening, but you may still experience some lingering grogginess. As she spoke, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Sweetheart, we just got to the hospital parking garage. Your father is absolutely livid. He's talking about pressing additional charges. Mom's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. How are you feeling? Do you need us to bring you different clothes? I looked down at my wedding dress, now wrinkled and stained with hospital antiseptic. The sight of the intricate beadwork that had taken months to choose made me feel nauseous. Yes, please. Anything. I can't wear this anymore. We brought your favorite sweats and sneakers, Mom said gently. We'll be up in 5 minutes. David was scrolling through his phone with increasing horror. Jenna, there are already 3 news articles online. Mother-in-law drugs bride at wedding reception. Someone leaked the story. Jessica grabbed his phone. That's not the worst part. Look at the comments. Her face went pale as she read. Half of them are saying you're probably lying for attention. The other half are calling for Mom to be locked up forever. My parents arrived then, and seeing my father's face was like watching a storm roll in. Dad had always been mild-mannered, the type to avoid conflict at all costs. But his eyes held a fury I'd never seen before. Where is she? He demanded, not even bothering with pleasantries. Where is Margaret right now? Dad, she's already been arrested. That's not enough. His voice was shaking. Jenna, when I think about what could have happened. If you'd had an allergic reaction, or fallen downstairs, or... He couldn't finish the sentence. Mom was quieter, but her hands were trembling as she helped me change out of the wedding dress. Honey, your sister called. Sarah wants to know if you need her to cancel the honeymoon flights. The honeymoon. Our dream trip to Tuscany that we'd been planning for 8 months. The thought of trying to pretend everything was normal, of forcing smiles for photos in romantic vineyards while this nightmare played out in the media, seemed impossible. I don't know, I admitted. David, what do you think? He looked exhausted, older than his 28 years. I think we need to decide what normal looks like now. Because our old normal just got blown to pieces. Detective Rodriguez reappeared with an update that made everything worse. We've been in contact with the DA's office. Given the premeditation and the potential for serious harm, they're considering felony charges. Mrs. Chen could be looking at 2 to 5 years in prison. Jessica made a choking sound. 5 years? But she's never been in trouble before. She takes care of Grandma, she volunteers at church. She's been systematically medicating people without their consent, Detective Rodriguez said bluntly. That's not a first offense, Miss Chen. That's a pattern of behavior that we're just now discovering. David's phone buzzed with a call from his cousin Marcus in Chicago. Then another from his aunt in Phoenix. Then his college roommate in Seattle. It's going viral, he said hollowly. Everyone we know is calling. As if summoned by his words, my phone started ringing too. My college friends, former coworkers, distant relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years but had seen the story online. Turn them off, Mom suggested quietly. Both phones. You don't owe anyone explanations right now. But even as we powered down our phones, I could see the reality of our situation crystallizing. This wasn't just about Margaret's arrest anymore. This was about rebuilding our entire lives under public scrutiny, with our most intimate violations splashed across social media for strangers to dissect and judge. And somewhere in the back of my mind, one terrifying question kept circling. If Margaret had been willing to drug me to make me more compliant, what else might she have done over the years that we were only beginning to discover? The next morning, Jessica showed up at our hotel room at 7 a.m. with coffee and devastating news. Grandma Rose is in the hospital, she said without preamble, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Adult Protective Services found her completely disoriented last night. Her regular doctor said her blood work shows she's been getting nearly double her prescribed medication doses for months. David sank onto the bed, still in yesterday's wrinkled tuxedo shirt. Is she going to be okay? They don't know yet. She's so confused she doesn't remember her own name. Jessica's voice cracked. The doctor said prolonged overmedication can cause permanent cognitive damage in elderly patients. We might never know how much of her dementia progression was actually mom poisoning her. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Sweet, gentle Grandma Rose, who used to sneak me extra cookies during family dinners and always asked about my work with genuine interest. Margaret had been slowly destroying her own mother's mind. There's more, Jessica continued, pulling out her phone. I called Mom's church to let them know she wouldn't be volunteering this week. Pastor Williams said 3 different elderly parishioners have mentioned feeling unusually drowsy after drinking tea Margaret brought to their homes during visits. Jesus Christ, David whispered. How many people has she done this to? The police want to interview all of them today. And Detective Rodriguez called. They're searching Mom's house this morning. They found a whole box of different medications in her bedroom closet. Pills from at least 6 different prescription bottles, all belonging to people she's provided care for over the past 2 years. My phone, which I turned back on to call work, started buzzing with a notification from our wedding photographer. The message made my blood run cold. Hi Jenna. I've had several media outlets contact me requesting to purchase photos from your reception. Obviously, I'm not releasing anything without your permission, but wanted you to know. Also, someone broke into my car last night and stole my backup camera equipment. Not sure if it's related, but thought you should be aware. Hope you're doing okay. Someone stole her equipment, I told David and Jessica. After media outlets contacted her about buying our photos. They want pictures of you looking drugged, Jessica said grimly. For the articles. Evidence of how the medication affected you during the reception. David's phone rang, his father calling from Denver, where he'd been on a business trip during the wedding. David had texted him the basics last night, but hearing him try to explain the full situation to his dad was heartbreaking. No, Dad, you don't understand. She planned it for months. She has a notebook documenting everything. David paused, listening. Yes, I know she's your ex-wife, but she drugged Jenna. She could have killed her. I could hear his father's voice through the phone, getting louder and more agitated. David's parents had divorced when he was 12, and his father had moved across the country partly to get away from Margaret's controlling behavior. Now it seemed like his worst fears about his ex-wife were being confirmed. Dad, calm down. No, don't fly back here. There's nothing you can do right now. David rubbed his forehead. Can you call Grandma Rose's doctor? She's at Presbyterian Hospital and they need someone to make medical decisions for her since Mom obviously can't. After hanging up, David looked at me with exhaustion that seemed to go bone deep. My dad said he tried to warn me years ago that Mom had boundary issues. He said she used to slip sleeping pills into his drinks when he worked late, claiming she was helping him get better rest. The pattern was becoming clearer and more horrifying by the hour. Margaret hadn't just decided to drug me on a whim, this was how she operated. This was how she'd been controlling people for years, maybe decades. Jessica showed us her phone screen. The story made the front page of the Post. Wedding day horror, mother-in-law's sinister plot. They have quotes from Marcus, the catering manager. And somehow they got hold of Margaret's booking information for your hotel room. What does that mean? It means they know she had access to your room key. The article is suggesting she might have been planning to drug you again on your wedding night if her first attempt hadn't worked well enough. I thought about Margaret's texts from last night, her insistence on bringing me something stronger to help me sleep. The realization of how close I'd come to being completely helpless, alone in a hotel room with someone who saw drugging me as an act of love, made me feel physically sick. I need air, I said suddenly, heading for the balcony door. But as soon as I stepped outside, I saw them, photographers with telephoto lenses positioned across the street, cameras trained on our hotel room window. We were trapped. David pulled me back from the balcony immediately, closing the curtains with a sharp snap. We can't stay here, he said, pacing the small hotel room. They'll camp out there all day waiting for photos. Jessica looked up from her laptop, her face pale. It's worse than that. Someone posted our home address on Twitter. There are already people gathering outside your apartment building. My heart sank. Our little one-bedroom apartment that we'd spent months decorating for our return from the honeymoon was now surrounded by strangers with cameras and opinions about our private nightmare. The building manager called, I said, checking my voicemails. Mrs. Patterson from 4B complained about reporters blocking the lobby entrance. And someone tried to bribe the doorman for access to our floor. David's phone rang with a call from Detective Rodriguez. He put it on speaker automatically now, we'd stopped trying to have private conversations. I have an update on your mother-in-law's arraignment, she said without preamble. She's been charged with assault in the first degree, reckless endangerment, and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. Bail is set at $50,000. Will she make bail? Jessica asked quietly. Her lawyer is arguing that she's not a flight risk because of her caregiving responsibilities, but given what we found at her house, the judge isn't inclined to be lenient. There was a pause. We also discovered something else. She had detailed notes about your honeymoon itinerary, including the name and address of your hotel in Florence. The blood drained from my face. She was planning to follow us to Italy? We found printed emails with the hotel, asking about surprising her son and daughter-in-law during your stay. She claimed she wanted to plan a romantic dinner for you both. David sat down heavily on the bed. She was never going to stop. Even after the wedding, even after we left the country, she was going to keep trying to control us. Jessica's laptop chimed with a new email. She read it and her face crumpled. It's from St. Mary's Church. They're temporarily suspending Mom's volunteer activities pending the outcome of her case. Pastor Williams says 3 of the elderly parishioners she brought tea to have been hospitalized in the past month with unexplained fatigue and confusion. 3 more people, I whispered. How did no one notice the pattern? Because she was careful, Detective Rodriguez said through the phone. She targeted isolated elderly individuals and people going through stressful situations. Anyone who might naturally be expected to seem tired or anxious. A new text came through on David's phone from his Uncle Robert. David, your cousin Amy just called. She remembered something from Christmas dinner. Margaret insisted on making hot chocolate for everyone, and Amy's kids fell asleep unusually early. We thought it was just the excitement of the day wearing them off, but now. My hands started shaking. She drugged children? At Christmas? Jessica was typing frantically on her laptop. I'm making a list of every family gathering in the past 2 years, everyone who might have eaten or drunk anything Mom prepared. She looked up with horror in her eyes. David, remember Easter when your cousin Jake said he felt weird after dinner? He left early because he was so dizzy. And Thanksgiving when Aunt Linda had to lie down during dessert, David added, his voice hollow. She said she suddenly felt exhausted, but she'd seemed fine all day. Detective Rodriguez's voice cut through our growing panic. We're opening a broader investigation into your mother's activities over the past 5 years. Anyone who thinks they may have been affected should contact us immediately. After she hung up, the 3 of us sat in stunned silence. What had started as a violation of my wedding day was expanding into something much larger and more sinister. Margaret hadn't just drugged me, she'd been systematically medicating friends, family members, and vulnerable elderly people for years. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Jenna, Mom just called. A reporter showed up at their house asking for quotes about how Margaret's behavior affected the family dynamic. They want to know if they ever suspected she was dangerous. The media circus was expanding beyond just David and me. Now my parents, my sister, probably every person who'd ever interacted with Margaret was going to be dragged into this nightmare. We need a lawyer, I said suddenly. Not just for dealing with Margaret's case, but for protecting ourselves. This is spiraling out of control. David nodded, but I could see the weight of everything crushing him. His mother wasn't just a criminal now, she was potentially a serial predator who'd used his family gatherings and relationships as hunting grounds for victims. And somewhere in a jail cell across town, Margaret was probably still convinced she'd been trying to help people. 3 days later, I was sitting in lawyer Amanda Pierce's office when she delivered news that made my stomach drop to the floor. The DA wants to offer Margaret a plea deal, she said, sliding a document across her mahogany desk. 18 months in minimum security prison, plus mandatory psychiatric evaluation and 5 years supervised probation. 18 months? David's voice cracked. That's it? For systematically poisoning people for years? Amanda adjusted her glasses. The challenge is proving intent to harm versus intent to help. Margaret's defense team is building a case around diminished capacity. They're claiming she genuinely believed she was providing medical assistance to people in distress. I felt like screaming. She crushed pills into my wedding cake. How is that medical assistance? Her lawyer is arguing that she was treating what she perceived as severe anxiety disorder. They have character witnesses from her church ready to testify about her years of volunteer caregiving. Amanda's expression was grim. Plus, Margaret's been evaluated by 2 psychiatrists who diagnosed her with something called caregiver syndrome, a delusional condition where people become convinced that others need their medical intervention. David stood up and started pacing. So she gets to claim mental illness and walk away with a slap on the wrist? There's more, Amanda continued. 3 of the elderly victims are refusing to cooperate with prosecution. They still believe Margaret was helping them. Mrs. Henderson from the church actually wrote a letter to the judge asking for leniency. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. David, you need to see the news. Channel 7 just ran a segment called Angel of Mercy or Master Manipulator. They interviewed 5 people who say Mom saved them during difficult times. I showed the text to Amanda, who sighed deeply. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Margaret's defense team is launching a public relations campaign. They're positioning her as a misguided caregiver rather than a predator. What about Grandma Rose? David asked. She's been in the hospital for 4 days because of the overmedication. Your grandmother's cognitive state makes her an unreliable witness. Her doctors can't definitively prove that Margaret's medication adjustments caused permanent damage versus natural dementia progression. Amanda pulled out another file. However, we did get some good news. The FBI is opening a federal investigation. The FBI? I sat up straighter. Margaret transported controlled substances across state lines when she researched your honeymoon hotel in Florence. That makes it a federal case. FBI agents are reviewing her computer files, phone records, and travel history for the past 3 years. David's phone rang with a call from his father in Denver. He answered on speaker. David, I just got off the phone with an FBI agent named Collins. She wants to interview me about your mother's behavior during our marriage. His father's voice was strained. Son, I need to tell you something I should have shared years ago. My heart started racing. What is it, Dad? When your mother and I were going through our divorce, my lawyer found evidence that she'd been forging my signature on prescription refill requests. She was getting sleeping medication in my name and keeping it for herself. There was a long pause. We never pressed charges because I just wanted out of the marriage, but now. Amanda was taking rapid notes. Mr. Chen, we need you to contact Agent Collins immediately. That's evidence of a 15-year pattern of prescription fraud. After hanging up, David slumped in his chair. This keeps getting worse. How many people has she hurt over the years? Amanda's assistant knocked and entered with an urgent expression. Ms. Pierce, there's been a development. Margaret Chen just gave an interview to Channel 5 from jail. It's airing in 20 minutes. We watched in stunned silence as Margaret appeared on screen wearing orange jail scrubs, looking frail and confused. The interviewer, a blonde woman with sympathetic eyes, lobbed softball questions about Margaret's caregiving philosophy. I've devoted my entire life to helping people, Margaret said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When I see someone suffering from anxiety or stress, my natural instinct is to provide comfort. That's what mothers do, we take care of our families. So you maintained that you were trying to help your daughter-in-law during her wedding? Jenna was having panic attacks for weeks before the ceremony. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. David was so worried about her mental state. Margaret looked directly into the camera. I simply gave her a small amount of the same medication that helps thousands of people with anxiety every day. Without her knowledge or consent, the interviewer pressed gently. Margaret's expression shifted to one of wounded confusion. I've been giving my mother-in-law her medications for 3 years. I've helped church members during health crises. No one ever complained before. I don't understand why this situation is being criminalized when all I wanted was for Jenna to enjoy the most important day of her life. David muted the television, his face pale with rage. She's playing the victim. She's actually sitting in jail playing the victim. Amanda was making more notes. This interview might actually help our case. She just admitted on television to medicating multiple people without medical licenses or prescriptions. My phone started buzzing with calls from reporters wanting my response to Margaret's claims. Then texts from friends and family who'd seen the interview. The narrative was shifting in real time, and I could feel public opinion being manipulated by Margaret's performance. She said I was having panic attacks, I said quietly. I wasn't having panic attacks. I was stressed about normal wedding things. Jenna, Amanda said carefully, we need to discuss something else. Margaret's legal team has requested a psychological evaluation of you as well. They want to determine if you actually did need medical intervention for anxiety. The room spun around me. Not only had Margaret violated and drugged me, now I was going to be put on trial for my own mental health, forced to prove that I hadn't deserved to be medicated against my will. And somewhere out there, people were watching Margaret's interview and wondering if maybe she really had been trying to help. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse hallway watching Margaret being led away in handcuffs after receiving her final sentence, 8 years in federal prison. The FBI investigation had uncovered everything. Agent Collins found evidence that Margaret had been systematically drugging people for over a decade, forging prescriptions, stealing medications from elderly patients, and maintaining detailed records of her victims' responses to different dosages. Her computer files revealed she'd been researching sedatives and dosing strategies like a twisted scientist. The breakthrough came when they discovered Margaret's research journal, hidden in her basement. Unlike the notebook Jessica found, this one contained clinical observations spanning 12 years. She documented everything, which medications worked best on different personality types, optimal dosing for various body weights, even photos of her victims before and after being drugged to compare their compliance levels. Grandma Rose became the key witness after all. As the overmedication cleared from her system, her cognitive function improved dramatically. She testified via video link, describing years of Margaret forcing pills on her and threatening to send her to a nursing home if she refused. The jury was visibly shaken watching an 86-year-old woman describe being held prisoner by her own granddaughter. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, Margaret's own pride. Agent Collins discovered she'd been recording some of her interventions on her phone, apparently to review her technique. We listened in horror as she narrated crushing pills into Aunt Linda's Christmas cookies, explaining to her camera how she was correcting Linda's excessive holiday anxiety. The federal charges stuck because Margaret had transported controlled substances across state lines multiple times, including bringing sedatives to out-of-state family gatherings. She was convicted on 14 counts of assault, prescription fraud, and endangering vulnerable adults. David and I didn't stay for the sentencing hearing. By then, we'd already moved across the country to Seattle and started rebuilding our lives. We never did take that honeymoon to Italy. Instead, we spent our first anniversary hiking in Olympic National Park, far from cameras and reporters. The media attention eventually died down, though our wedding story became a cautionary tale shared on true crime podcasts and legal blogs. I learned to live with strangers knowing the most intimate details of the worst day of my life. 7 of Margaret's victims came forward during the trial. Mrs. Henderson, the church member who initially defended Margaret, finally admitted she'd been experiencing memory loss and confusion for months after Margaret's visits. 3 family members testified about feeling inexplicably drowsy during holiday gatherings. The pattern was undeniable. Margaret never showed remorse. During her final statement to the court, she maintained that she'd been providing medical care to people too proud to seek help themselves. She claimed her only mistake was not getting proper medical credentials for her caregiving work. Jessica moved to Seattle with us. She couldn't stay in the same city where her mother's crimes had unfolded, couldn't face the neighbors and church members who still occasionally asked when Margaret might be released. We'd become closer than ever, bonded by the shared trauma of discovering who Margaret really was. David still struggles with guilt. He goes to therapy twice a month to work through the complex grief of mourning a mother who's still alive but was never who he thought she was. Some days are harder than others, but we're building something real together, a marriage based on actual trust instead of chemical compliance. We renewed our vows last month in a simple ceremony with just immediate family. This time, I made the cake myself. The hospital confirmed it, the FBI proved it, and justice finally served it. Margaret drugged me at my own wedding, and she's paying for it with 8 years of her freedom. Sometimes the good guys actually win.